I'd leave your microphone open.
Yeah, the big thing with muting yourself is you'll start talking and forget you're on mute.
Okay.
Okay, so are we ready to go live here?
Yes.
Okay, I am going live.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Orangeville Council's electronic meeting, March 23rd. Calling this meeting to order. First order of business, we're just going to call a roll call so that members of the public can see that our council is in attendance at our electronic meeting. So we'll just go from right to left here at the council table normally. Councillor Andrews.
Present, and I'm here.
Very good. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, I'm here.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
I am also here.
Very good. Councillor Peters.
I'm here.
Councillor Post.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm here.
Councillor Taylor.
Good afternoon, Orangeville. Good afternoon, Your Worship.
Thank you. Okay, as we roll to our agenda, the first item here is our land acknowledgement. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. Any disclosures of direct or indirect pecuniary interest?
None.
Seeing none,
None.
we'll move on to the approval of our agenda. May I have a motion to approve our agenda for today's special council meeting?
Councillor
I'll
Post will move it.
Councillor Post, Deputy Mayor McIntosh is seconding it. All in favor?
Yes.
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 Very good. Moving on to staff reports. This particular staff report is something that our treasurer has been working on for a number of months. This is additional lending facility for the town. Thank you.
Isn't our staff report
Oh,
procedure bylaw first?
sorry. Let's back this up a bit. We have to pass the bylaw for electronic participation. So may I have a motion to approve this bylaw?
I will. I'll make a
Councillor
motion.
Councillor Sherwood,
I'll second.
second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor?
Yes.
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 All right, moving on to 5.2. I was just speaking, this is a bylaw for an additional lending facility for the town of up to $10 million to the Toronto Union Bank. Thanks to Treasurer Nandini Syed for working on this over the past several months. This facility will be used for regular town business, and probably timing here is we don't know the immediate future brings, but having this additional money available is a good thing for the town. May I have a motion to approve this bylaw authorizing the entering in all insurance agreement with Toronto Union Bank?
I
Frank, can I
approve.
ask a question?
Once, can we just move this and approve and second it, and then we'll have comments?
I'll move it, Your Worship. Debbie?
Councillor
Andy will
Sherwood,
second it.
seconder, Deputy Mayor Josh. Councillor Peters.
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the treasurer, just hoping you could provide a brief description for ourselves and for the public on which funds are allowed to be used for which expenditures. And, you know, I understand this is sort of a general category, if you will, but certain reserves are dedicated to certain funds, that sort of thing. So maybe I could just get a 30-second clarification on those accounts.
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Peters. So the line of credit, as you have indicated, this is fairly open and it functions like a personal line of credit. So we have up to 10 million to draw down, and it can be used primarily, it is cash flow mitigation tools, and therefore it can be used for capital projects, any emergency management expenditure, as well as our working capital for coming weeks and months. Back to you, Worship.
Thank you.
May I
Any
ask a
other
question,
further questions?
May I ask a question, Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Andrews.
To the treasurer, could you clarify the utilization for emergency management applications?
Madam Treasurer.
To your worship, back to the councillor. So once again, utilization will depend as the situation is evolving. We are taking this on a day-to-day basis. As I've already alluded, this is primarily for cash mitigation purposes. We do have access up to 10 million, and we will draw down whatever we require on a move forward basis. So at this point in time, the utilization is something that we will be looking toward our senior leadership as this events and it continues to unfold. Back to you, Worship.
Your Worship, I have a question.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to the treasurer. Are you asking for us to provide the length of the loan, the term, or is that something you're working out with TD Bank as to how long the term is?
Madam Treasurer.
Your Worship, to Councillor Sherwood. So we have attached a terms and condition as part of the bylaw. So the term of the loan has been, or the term of the line of credit has been determined to be up to 25 years. Given that this is a revolving line of credit, so we do have the ability to pay it down within a reasonable time as we see it fit. Back to your worship.
Thank
you.
Any other questions from councillors?
Your worship, Todd?
Yes, sir. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, your worship. I guess more of a general comment to everyone, but I completely understand the need to have a line of credit. We have a line of credit ourselves in our personal lives. I think it's essential, given where we're going, that we be able to do the town's business and have access to this. However, I guess my thinking and my question would be, wouldn't it be better to cancel some expenditures that we could move to future years? And specifically thinking about some of the capital projects that we have already approved as part of the budget process, which we did in a benevolent forward fashion. However, this is eroding as we go along. And I think it behooves us to have a different approach and think about different things at this time. And if I may, one last thing, I completely understand, and to my fellow council members and to the public, what I'm suggesting, instead of it going into a deficit today, it means that we could have an 8, 9, 12% tax increase at a future date, because we'll still need to do these things if this is the path that we decide to go on. But I would almost rather not go into debt if we could, and forego some of the capital projects, if it's a possibility.
Councillor Taylor, let me respond to that. Earlier today, I had a meeting with CAO Brennan. We talked about some of the capital projects going forward, and there are a number of them that have been funded by provincial grants and also by development charges. The thought earlier today, and something that we should agree to in our meeting today, is to ask town staff to segregate, identify where the funding of those projects come from, if they have been funded previously and through provincial grants or through development charges that we have. You know, there's a thought to keep those projects going and to look at delaying any other major expenditures. So my recommendation, and I guess, you know, let's get through this bylaw first. I think my recommendation later in the meeting would be that we task town staff to break down what our major expenditures are going to be, where the money's coming from, and report back to a future council meeting, which I would hope would be in the next couple of weeks, and we can make some of those bigger decisions as you have suggested. Regarding my own personal opinion on the revolving line is it's a line of credit that is only going to be dipped into when council approves expenditures. I think it's better under our current crisis situation to have that money available in the event that we need it. That's, again, my personal opinion and how I would be voting on this particular motion.
Your worship.
Yes, Councillor Taylor, go right ahead.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. So if I may, I completely agree with what you're suggesting, and I see our treasurer nodding her head as well, and I do think what we're talking about is prudent. If the public is watching this, and I know it's a unique set of circumstances, and the media, I don't want them to think that council is just willy-nillying going out and putting this town into more debt, and that's not what any of us are saying here today. So it's just an important point that I want to make sure that people understand and have clarification on. And if I may, Your Worship, one last one, and that is that we did decide to borrow for the fire hall. And I know that that was still up in the air, but I would feel that that is a firm push at this point. And I know staff has to do their recommendations, but given the circumstances, I just can't see that happening in 2020.
Your Worship, if I may just add just a comment there very quickly.
Councillor Andrews, go right ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Taylor, I agree. I think that, the members of our community need to have that clarification. And I think that your point is certainly well taken, that at this point, this is an opportunity for a line of credit that would be reviewed at any given time by members of council. This is not putting us further into debt. This is an opportunity for us to have, if necessary, some funds that would be available in those cases of emergency or whatever it would be designated as being.
Correct. Any other councillors wish to comment on this? Seeing none. Did we have a motion here?
Yes, Your Worship, I believe I put a motion on.
And seconded by
myself.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Sure.
Okay, let's vote, and I would suggest we'll just go in order again so we don't talk over each other. I'll call your name and you can vote. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Okay, thank you. So I wonder if we should put a motion in at this moment. Councillor Taylor, do you want to make a motion about directing town staff to look into expenditures and where the money to fund those expenditures is coming from, and report back to a council meeting 2 weeks hence? Would you like to make that motion?
I would, Your Worship. Just with the clarifying, one other thing, if I may add to that, is that we also understand a list of priorities that we may essentially consider pushing.
Right, and yes, so let's make sure that's part of our motion, that town staff puts together a priority list for councillors to consider at our next meeting.
That's great.
All right, can we have a seconder for that?
Mayor Brown, I will second it.
Okay, Councillor Post, thank you. Any further comment by councillors on this motion? Seeing none, I will again call the vote in the same order. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Councillor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Thank you. Moving on to 5.3, relief measures by the town. So I'll open this up on the first point, penalty and interest for taxes. So I think we also need to talk about deferment of taxes. And I'm wondering if I can ask our treasurer if you could provide us with some estimate of the cost of deferral of taxes and what that means for the town and for its residents. Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Council. So our next tax due date is April 27th. As Council is aware, we levy for school board as well as the county. So a tax deferral will not only just impact us, but it will also impact our upper tier as well as all the school boards. In terms of financial implication, this is the second tax due date for the interim taxes. So we're looking at a little over 15 million for this, and that combines school board, us, and the county. So just to give you an idea of the proportion, so 61%, again, I'm rounding these numbers, 61% is our own levy, 27% is county, and the remainder of that is school board levy. So that's a very high level and very rounded numbers that I'm providing. Back to you.
I'm wondering if I can ask CAO Brennan if you could comment on any conversations you may have had with the county and or the Ministry of Education or Upper Grand School Board regarding payment of those taxes. Mr. Brennan.
Your Worship, through you. I had indirect conversations at the county. However, this has not gone to county council itself yet, any type of request. I would propose that it would have to go to county council for approval because, again, it's their cash flow that we would be limiting. As the lower tier, we are required to collect their taxes. Likewise, with the Board of Education, if this is a way that council would want to go and consider, I can reach out to the board to see what that would mean to them as well. It's a full deferral, if it is a deferral. Again, even with our residents, we have to maintain, if it is a deferral, it's pushing off the inevitable of coming up with this money to pay for taxes. So I think we have to consider all aspects of it as we go forward.
Can I ask a question at some point, Your Worship?
Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to the Treasurer. I believe that the first payment due to the school boards and the county is at the end of this month. So what I would imagine that with it being the first payment due to them, they would require that cash flow. Have you already prepared those funds and that you're looking to just defer perhaps the next installment, which won't be until June? Or are you actually looking to defer, are we looking to defer the March payment? Because I would think that those have already been prepared.
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship to Councillor Sherwood. So you're correct. The first installment of payment is due March 31st, which actually has already been, requisitioned, or we have already paid the county and the school board. So the next payment is due on June 30th. So at this point in time, any deferral from these two levels of body, we would be looking at the June 30th payment. Back to Your Worship.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. What we're potentially embarking upon is a cash flow crisis. So the entire economy could easily shut down at this point. What we're talking about here, and I think we need to be specific, is this isn't about necessarily a town-wide tax deferral. The way I think that we should approach this is, if you are in need, and if you're watching this today, this isn't carte blanche, in my opinion, fellow councillors, for the town of Orangeville to massively defer their taxes. This is for people who are in need to defer their taxes. And we could put a process in place, and I've followed up with, not followed up with Newmarket, I've read what Newmarket has done. They have placed a deferral in place for people who are in need. And that's really what we need to do. And initially, yes, there's already people out, and the seriousness of the situation is big. However, not everyone will need to indulge upon this at the beginning. Some will still be able to pay. And as citizens who care about this town, we should pay if we can. However, if you can't, you defer. So the impact isn't as big as what we're talking about.
Right. Madam Treasurer, could you let us know if you've thought about how you can take these requests, and is there some way, or you are just asking people to call in? What are your thoughts about this, Madam Treasurer?
Thank you, Your Worship, for the question. So I have seen different municipalities taking different steps. So from my vantage point, most of the municipalities that I have been looking at, they either have given a sort of a deferral all across the board, not as you come basis, because from our perspective, if we are taking phone calls or trying to mitigate case by case basis in terms of tax deferral, so that would put tremendous burden on administration. So at this point in time, if I have to honestly speak to this, it should either be deferral all across the board or no deferral at all. Back to Your Worship.
Your Worship,
Can I
may I
ask a
step
question?
in?
Yes, Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Madam Treasurer, for that information. I've got actually a couple here. First one is directly to you. What is the financial risk moving forward if we select one or the other option that you're considering, one of which is a full deferral across the board, or as Councillor Taylor has indicated, selected individuals who've come forth? You've indicated the human issue of trying to approach this from a staffing perspective. How do we vet this? But again, what's the risk to the organization?
Madam Treasurer.
Thank you for that question. So really, at the end of the day, the financial risk will depend as the situation unfolds. I mean, right before this, Council just approved a line of credit, and this is for emergency purposes. So at the end of the day, as Councillor Taylor has very succinctly put, that this will become a cash flow crisis. So for me to project what the overall financial implication will be without knowing what the future holds, it's quite difficult. Yeah. But if I really have to answer your question, I would say that given that we levy for two other bodies, county and school board, and if we have to maintain it, if we have to continue to maintain paying their portion, then tax deferral on a case-by-case basis or deferral all across the board is something that council really have to look into.
Okay, and my second question again to yourself, Madam Treasurer, and also to the CAO so that I have clarification. The point that the CAO had mentioned is that process between the county and also the school boards. In that particular case, do we have to wait for them to defer our payments, or how is that approach so that not only we as council understand, but also the general public understands the implication and the timelines too?
So,
Madam Treasurer, yep, do you want to comment?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, through Your Worship to the councillor. So, the taxation process is highly prescribed under the Municipal Act, and it is prescribed under the Municipal Act that the lower tier municipality would levy taxes on behalf of school and county, or school board and county, and 4 times a year we will pay them on an equal basis. So, until such time, either the province changes that, or either of these boards give us a direct relief of tax deferral or deferral of payment. At this point in time, to the best of my knowledge, the Municipal Act does not allow the treasurer or the council as a whole to defer those payments.
Madam Treasurer, can I ask a question? The next tax payment is April 1st, is that correct? Madam Treasurer?
The next tax due date is April 27th.
27th. And that is the second of 4?
That's correct, Your Worship.
So can you quantify for us if we did a complete deferral of all taxes for all land categories? What would the cost be to carry that reduction in income of the town?
So a quick and dirty way of doing this is whatever it's out. So the next tax due date, we are probably bringing in a little over 15 million. So that's one of the numbers I stated in earlier. So that would be the cash flow deferral that you're looking at. But when you if you're asking me in terms of what other financial implication there is to it, then I would respectfully ask for some time so that I can look into some more numbers.
Right. And have you looked at some of the other municipalities in Southern Ontario, and what have they been doing? Madam Treasurer.
So there are some municipalities, some of our neighboring municipalities that have gone through the process of deferring taxes. Actually, the one that comes to my mind, who are not a direct neighbor, but city of, I believe, Burlington deferred their next tax due date for 3 months. Once again, I wouldn't necessarily know all the financial implication that they are willing to go through in order to make this possible. I can only speak for our financial situation. So like I said, if council would allow me a couple of weeks and look at some numbers, and perhaps I can bring back some more information in the next meeting.
Mr.
Can
Mayor,
you
may I
confirm
comment?
whether, yes, just a second. Could you confirm whether Burlington gave tax deferral to industrial, commercial, and residential taxpayers?
I'm going by one of their press release, so I'm not completely aware whether this applies to all of their tax classes or just to residential, but I can definitely verify that for council.
Okay, I'm sorry, who was speaking there? Wish to speak?
Councillor Peters.
Councillor Peters, yes, sir. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the treasurer, could you perhaps describe the difference between, if there is one, between a deferral of taxes and the waiving of late fees and penalties? In my mind, if those residents and businesses that are able to pay continue to do so, what we're really talking about is not collecting on any late fees or interest over time, and perhaps that reduces administrative effort. But if that's different financially than deferring the entire amount, I'd just like an explanation, perhaps.
Madam Treasurer.
Through your worship to the councillor, so taxes is essentially the amount owing based on your property assessment times the tax rate. So when you're deferring your taxes, so to speak, you're essentially delaying the payment of your taxes for a certain period of time. Penalty and interest is essentially user fees, so to speak, on top of any outstanding taxes that are owing on your account. So penalty and interest is our revenue that we get to keep, whereas taxes, as I have alluded earlier, we levy taxes for ourselves, both the county and the school board. So that's kind of a very high level difference between the two. I think the second portion of your question, if I understood that correctly, if businesses or our ratepayers are paying their taxes, then there shouldn't be any penalty or interest applied to their account.
Right. So if I may follow up, Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
What I was trying to get at was to relieve the cash flow crisis that Councillor Taylor referred to. We want as many ratepayers as are able to continue with business as usual. And I worry that a deferral of 100% of properties across the town amplifies that crunch, and in essence, going to zero cash flow for a period of 90 days or whatever that period is. So what's the way to administer with the least effort on the part of staff and the systems that you have in place, making sure that only those that need to defer it or postpone those payments and not inflict any charges? How can we keep some of that money flowing so that we don't have to dip into reserves or debt?
Madam Treasurer, before you answer that, I want to call to Mr. Brennan, please. So it sounds like Madam Treasurer is concerned about the overwhelming number of phone calls and processing required. Do we have staff that we can shift into Treasury that can assist to deal with the onslaught of applications for deferral? Mr. Brennan.
Your worship, through you, again, the number of staff that we're going to have accessible to us, one is going to do, we'll have to look at the skill set. The tax world is not just anyone can drop in and deal with this. From a customer service perspective, it's just receiving the calls and collecting the data. We certainly can mobilize or redeploy some people in those areas. However, we also have to be concerned on the direction from the provincial government tomorrow on the definition of essential personnel and who must stay at home. So we have to consider all of these actions that's coming towards us. However, just for food for thought for council, our treasurer, if we had status quo, but said that we're going to look after those that are in trouble and that need some relief in the form of deferral, our treasurer probably could work out payment plans with these people, with the property owners, and maybe to not have so much of an impact on our fiscal area, maybe consider waiving the penalties of any late payments. That would also help, but would be certainly still allow us to have cash flow to continue on with our business of the corporation.
Right.
Your worship, I'd like to speak when you have a moment. It's Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Councillor Sherwood, I think I support with what Mr. Brennan is saying. I think there are many people in this town that are affected by this crisis, but there are also some that have the wherewithal to continue paying, both businesses and residents. And I think we need to encourage those who need help to ask for it, but hopefully there's some people that this is status quo. And I don't believe, and I guess councillors can correct me if I'm wrong, but a deferral does not mean a waiving of taxes. This is money that we will have to collect at some point in the future.
It's just a delay.
It's just a delay, and I'm certainly one of the council members who will be supporting waiving any penalty and interest collection on somebody who is in need of deferring their taxes. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. I just kind of wanted to recap what the Treasurer has brought to our attention, the fact that if we completely defer the April installment, we would have been expected to collect around $15 million. So we've used up our $10 million instantly, and now we're in a crisis situation because we're $5 million short. I'm going to be recommending, and I could put a motion out now or wait till further discussion, that we continue with the levy and continue with the pre-authorized payment withdrawals, but that we do a penalty and interest waiving of it for probably 90 days or 3 months. And that if anyone is in real hardship and can't make those installments, they have the peace of mind of knowing they won't be charged penalty on that, and that they don't necessarily have to call the town to say, I can't make my April installment, because they know that we are not going to charge penalty and interest, and they can pay when they can. I think the continuation of funds is very important, and those that can pay will continue to pay, and those that don't pay have the ease of mind to know that there's no penalty and interest charges.
All right, Councillor Peters seconds.
Okay.
If I could
Before
just
we
say something.
I just wanted to ask Madam Treasurer, and again, councillors, we haven't agreed to a next meeting date, but I'm hoping 2 weeks hence we can have another meeting. I'm wondering if, Madam Treasurer, we should wait until that period of time when you can quantify and give us some harder data on what these deferrals would be, I don't know. Councillors, what do you think about deferring it for another couple of weeks? Because the next payment's April 27th.
Your Worship, we have a pre-authorized payment plan coming out April 1st.
That's right.
That is
That's
probably
right,
over 1,000 people. No, I'm sorry, Councillor Taylor. The next installment is April 27th, but there are those of us that are on a monthly payment plan, and that comes out the first of the month. It has to be transmitted to the bank several days before that. So in other words, there's probably well over 1,000 of those that are already ready to go. And I see the Councillor, the Treasurer shaking her head. I know that. That's why I'm saying if we let those payments go through, then those of us, the other thing I would like to see the Treasurer do is if anybody comes back at insufficient funds or NSF, that we waive our NSF charges on those individuals, because there could be a situation where you've transmitted it for April 1st, it's going to bounce back, and our tradition has always been to charge them a fee. I would like to see that fee waived.
Your Worship.
Madam Treasurer, if I could ask one question. I agree with what Councillor Sherwood has said. There are people that have pre-authorized payments built into their mortgage payment. And, you know, some of it is PAP with the town, but some of it's built into the mortgage payment that their lender is drawing. My question to Madam Treasurer is, if lenders do draw the full mortgage payment and interest from one of our residents, are we able to refund them if they are in need? Madam Treasurer.
Thank you, Worship. To your Worship. So again, these are administrative issues that we have to figure out. I haven't been in contact with banks yet. And like I said, these are unusual times, and we are learning new things and figuring out new ways of providing services to our ratepayers. Case in point, today's meeting. So once again, this is one of those things that I really have to, council has to provide me with some time to get in touch with the different banks and to figure out how this is going to work out logistically. If I may, Your Worship, just to verify a couple of things that I've heard from Councillor Sherwood. So Councillor Sherwood is correct. Our monthly pre-authorized payment will come out on April 1st. And the dollar value for that is $1.6 million. And I also agree with the fact that in the event if somebody's payment goes NSF, the municipality does have the option to waive the NSF fee. Back to your Worship.
Thank you. So, Councillor, is there any other councillor who would like to weigh in on this right now?
Yes, if I could.
Okay, Councillor, let's go with Deputy Mayor McIntosh and then Councillor Taylor.
And then Councillor Post, please.
And Councillor Post.
And Peters.
Deputy Mayor.
And Andrews.
Okay, sorry.
Thank you.
All right, let's run through this.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Your Worship. I agree we need to do this now, not later.
I agree.
Couple of quick things too. I spoke to Sonia from the county this morning, and they're quite willing to waive the fees for 30 days as well. But again, as Ed Brennan said, county council has to approve that. So with you and I on county council, I don't think it's going to be an issue to get it waived for 30 days. But I think we need to do something now. So I agree with Councillor Sherwood. We need to do it as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. So just as clarification of the Deputy Mayor, and maybe I just didn't follow what was being said, but I thought we were talking about not moving ahead with a plan right now, and we'd get back together in a couple of weeks. And I wanted to react to that, and I guess my reaction is you know, team, I implore you, this is bigger than we all think. We don't have time to wait. We don't have 2 weeks to wait. We need to make that decision in this meeting today. We can't wait.
Agreed.
Second comment, if I may, we cannot have people coming to town hall and begging. We have to maintain dignity and allow people to be treated with respect as we're going through this situation. And the last comment is the $15 million that was referenced earlier for the tax deferral. You know, if you do the math on that, first of all, you wouldn't necessarily go into that line of credit right away. We have reserves. I've always advocated that we should use them on a rainy day. It's pouring, team. It's pouring. So we would use reserves is what I would suggest. And if we did borrow, if you borrow the whole $15 million at the 2.19% interest, it's about $27,000 a month to do that. Sorry, $2,700 a month. 27,000, excuse me. A little excited. 27,000, excuse me. So, but then you'd be out the money too. So we need guidance from the treasurer, but I can't sit here and feel good about ourselves as a team if we don't make the decision today. Like at the very least, we need to defer for 30 days. We've got people that are going to be unemployed right now based on the announcements that were made. So anyway, I'm off my horse. I appreciate you listening.
You know, Councillor Sherwood's comment about the immediacy of the PAP payments is certainly what we have to consider right now. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I echo actually what Councillor Taylor said, that I think we need to make a decision on this as soon as possible. I think that we need to be doing something today, and I've really been looking into what other municipalities are doing. One that specifically stands out to me is the town of Aurora, and they have done
Yes.
a 60-day deferral. So the payments will be till June 23rd. They've suspended their penalties. Now, they have also made the note that if you're paying to your mortgage company, that you continue to do so, and that any commercial residents that are looking to have their taxes deferred, that's on a case-by-case basis where they email the town and speak directly to the treasurer. I think that we need to follow the lead of what the town of Aurora is doing. My concern, and I appreciate definitely what Councillor Sherwood has said, but one of my concerns is that when we're going into this, if we're going to defer taxes for a couple of months, we know what we're walking into. If we're looking at only deferring the interest payments, we have no idea who's going to be paying and who's not going to be. I think when we can plan ahead, we can plan to defer and understand exactly where we're going to be financially. I think that by just deferring the interest payments or interest penalties, sorry, we're leaving ourselves in a situation where we don't know which residents are going to pay, which ones are not going to pay. We have no idea what our cash flow is going to look like. I think we're leaving ourselves in a precarious situation if we do that. And I would be more in the favor of deferring altogether for 30 days or 60 days, whatever council would determine. But I really like the direction the town of Aurora has gone. I think they've gone a long way to take care of their residents.
Councillor Andrews.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. And again, not to repeat everything that's been said by the members of council and those that have yet to speak, I absolutely agree with the urgency here. We've had a number of people who've reached out to all of us in different ways. I too have also investigated several municipalities across the province, in fact, across the country, who are implementing deferrals. And I think that, Councillor Sherwood's point is well taken, but I think that, we have to end up supporting those that, as Councillor Taylor has indicated, with essential services now being and will be clearly defined as early as tomorrow, and those that will be impacted even more severely, we have to make a very clear statement to the members of our community that we care, and I would certainly support Councillor Post's point as well.
Okay, just lost Councillor Andrews there, Mr. Bonato. I wanted to ask councillors what their thoughts were about deferral of residential, commercial, and industrial taxes. Obviously, virtually every business in town now is going to be affected by this, and I'm concerned for all of Orangeville. Councillors?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'll speak if you don't mind.
Councillor Peters.
Sure, just briefly on the previous topic, I can appreciate Councillor Post's commentary on that. What I worry is that a deferral means we guarantee that we get zero over that 60 or 90 days, and I don't think I'm ready for the town's finances to take that kind of hit. So while we may not be able to predict the exact amount that comes in, there will be some that comes in. And the administrative effort, again, we'd have to weigh both sides, whether a deferral saves a lot of staff effort or not, versus taking calls and walk-ins and that sort of thing. But again, I don't think residents or businesses would even necessarily have to enter a program per se, because with a waiving of interest and late charges, if they just don't make that payment, they don't have to sign up for a very specific plan or anything. They wait for that 60 or 90 days. And between now and then, I'm sure we'll be meeting several times, and maybe it gets extended based on the circumstances, that kind of thing. So I'm still in favor of the waiving rather than the deferring. And to your most recent comment, I think it should be a blanket across the board, commercial, residential, industrial. I don't think we want to start picking and choosing who this would apply to.
Right. I'm with you, Councillor Peters. Councillors, any other comment on this?
Yes, Your Worship, Councillor Sherwood. So
Yes.
just to recap, if we continue with letting the taxes become due as they are already scheduled, that being the PAP payment and the installment due on April 27th, again, with us waiving penalty, the people will have peace of mind knowing that if they miss those payments, they are not going to be penalized and can pay when they can.
Right, right.
Very good
So
point.
I think we kind of come to a point now, we need to craft a motion here on this.
Your worship, I
I'm
had put a motion on the floor, correct?
Okay. And can we just recap that, Madam Clerk?
Sure. The motion on the floor was actually moved by Councillor Sherwood and it was seconded by Councillor Peters. And it indicated that a penalty and interest would be waived for a period of 3 months. And it also included provisions with respect to the waiving of fees for any NSF funds.
Okay, well, that didn't talk about deferral of industrial, commercial, and residential?
Right now, as it's worded, it would apply to all.
Okay.
So in your worship, I wasn't asking for the installments to be deferred. We're just basically, my motion is that we waive penalty and interest charges for 3 months on all tax classes.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that
Okay.
clarification.
Right. Just one more thing, Madam Treasurer, we talked about it a little bit earlier. Those who have their taxes tied into their mortgage payment and who would like to take advantage of the deferral that we're offering to those who need, can you please check into a mechanism that we can collect the money from the bank and refund it to our taxpayers as required?
Thank you, Worship, for the question. To your Worship, I'm slightly unclear as to whether Council is approving deferrals. If somebody would clarify that for me.
My motion, your worship, is not to defer at this time. We have plenty of opportunity in coming councils to defer
Yes.
the future installments for June and September. But at this point, we have to make a decision today. And my motion does not say to defer the April tax installment. It's the waiving of penalty and interest and NSF charges.
Okay.
Yes.
Can I ask one quick question to that?
Councillor Post.
My question to that, and I appreciate where you're coming from, Councillor Sherwood, absolutely. With this, if we go ahead and approve this today, perhaps this is best to the clerk, would we still be able to revisit this issue and then defer those later payments?
Absolutely.
Is that something we can look at?
Absolutely.
Yes. Yes, you can.
And your worship.
Perfect. Thank you.
Worship, I'd
Yes,
just like to make
Mr.
one
Brennan.
comment.
Yes.
One comment, your worship. As stated earlier, the treasurer does have the right to work out payment plans and stuff with, so if there's some property owners, be it residential, commercial, industrial, that are having problems meeting their due dates and payments, they can always reach out to our treasurer and we can work out some type of agreement and payment plan.
Good.
Very good.
Your worship, could I ask
Wonderful.
Mr. Brennan something?
Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, your worship. Mr. Brennan, you mentioned earlier that you would be able to redeploy staff to Treasury. Would they be able to just basically do a call logging and then prioritize the significance as to prioritize to Treasury staff to return this person's call, so that you mentioned about having people in Treasury trying to make decisions that need a specific skill set. But if you deploy some staff members that can just at least take messages and prioritize how the Treasury staff needs to act on individual cases.
Madam Treasurer.
Oh, I put that to Mr. Brennan just for a staffing issue, and then the treasurer could respond.
Okay, Mr. Brennan.
Your worship, through you to Councillor Sherwood, from a staffing perspective, we would try to deploy as much as possible, be that in a customer service or someone to answer the calls. If we have someone in our organization that's got the skill set that with some training could help our treasury personnel, we would do that as well. But most definitely we want to have our experts in this field and our treasurer and deputy treasurer or our tax collector, the one that's working on this on case by case scenario. So again, even with the deployment of our staff, we have to see what's coming tomorrow from the province with regards of essential personnel, and we would classify our own personnel, I'm hoping. Again, from a space allocation in our town hall, we are practicing social distancing, even with our staff. So we certainly want to make sure we're taking care of the well-being of our staff as well. but it is doable.
Thank you, Your Worship.
Madam
Madam
Treasurer, did you
Treasurer?
wish to weigh in on that?
To Your Worship, so our CEO has pretty much summed it up, what I was about to say. The only other thing I would like to mention is that raise questions goes further than just taking a message over the phone. One, in the tax payment or tax related calls have to have some kind of access to our tax module so that they can look up the roll number. So it goes a little beyond than just taking a call over this phone. And as CEO Brennan has alluded earlier, that it requires a specific set of skills. So I would leave it at that for now for council consideration. Back to you, Worship.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. One more question to CAO Brennan. Is there an ability for staff to work from home and take customer service phone calls from home? Is that technology available?
Your Worship, right now our IT department, we do have some staff working from home, from normal laptops, VPN and whatnot. Right now our IT department is working on or checking into the ability to have sort of a customer service module from home. I can probably defer to our General Manager of Corporate Services to give an update on that. Understanding that I must thank our IT department and staff. They have done a wonderful job, and even getting our Microsoft Teams out so that we can hold this meeting in such a rush side. They have done a tremendous job, and they've been working very hard trying to get our digital solutions out so that we can work from home and remotely. But if you could to Ms. McKinney would be great.
Ms. McKinney, if you can weigh in on this, please.
Thank you, through the mayor. So a couple of comments. One, as part of our daily management team calls, we've asked what skills people might have to be redeployed, recognizing finance is a very unique skill set. And so no one with those particular skills have been identified. So that's point number one. Additionally, the work from home option is viable for a number of staff. However, as it relates to customer service specifically, we are limited with the technology that we can use over the phone. So that is something that we're working on. And the remaining piece of that was the availability of laptops, which, having a sense that this was coming, Jason and I had worked on proactively ordering additional laptops to enable more people to work from home. As you can imagine, the queue for their delivery has continued to stack over time, but we're hoping to receive them in the not too distant future. So there's really two answers there. Some customer service can take place at home, but not all of it because of our limited phone capability at this point.
Right. Okay. So if I can just recap on the penalties and interest. Councillor Sherwood has a motion on the floor to defer any penalties and interest, any NSF charges, etc., that our taxpayers may.
Your Worship, not to defer, it's to waive.
To waive. I misspoke there. Yes, to waive. And we have a seconder. So I guess at this time, unless anybody has something further to say, we'll call the vote. Any other comments, councillors?
Could you just end up explaining a little bit more about what the motion is, just so those that may be watching have an understanding of that, Your Worship?
Madam Clerk, Madam Clerk, could you review the motion, please?
Again, so it's moved by Councillor Sherwood and seconded by Councillor Peters that penalty and interest be waived for a period of 3 months across all tax classes, and further that the treasurer waive any NSF fees related to the processing of tax payments.
Okay. Any further comments, Councillor?
Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Taylor.
Just to be clear, aren't we not just setting everyone up to not pay?
Well, I think the messaging coming out of this meeting and out of our communications department, we will have to ask people to to pay if they can, and I don't know what more we could say, Councillor Taylor.
I guess, Your Worship, I'm just after a very simple response to, I mean no criticism of council, just a simple response to the public and what we're saying. And if I may, I'll try. What we're saying is pay if you can. We'd appreciate it if you can. The town has business that it needs to run. all of us use the essential services. It's imperative that the town keep running, sewage, water, all those things.
Mhm.
However, if you can't pay, council has just put something in process here that will allow you to not do that for a period of time.
Correct. That's exactly what we've proposed.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to read the roll call again to vote on this motion. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Thank you, councillors. Next item under town relief measures, we want to talk about transit. You know, there are a number of municipalities that, for instance, have waived fares on transit. A couple of reasons. One, it reduces the interaction between drivers and the public. Many of the municipalities that are running transit systems for free now are encouraging riders to access the vehicles through the back doors, again, to keep social distancing. I spoke to CAO Brennan this morning. The numbers are down significantly on usage of it, and essential services and essential non-essential businesses are going to be closed now. So there's going to be even less need for public transit. So I guess there's two questions here. One, do we continue with the expensive public transit at this time? Or do we stop it and redeploy that money elsewhere?
Mr.
So
Mayor,
I'll throw
can I weigh
those
in
two
on this?
questions out. Councillor Post.
Yeah, I'd really like to weigh in on this. Thank you very much. I think transit right now is definitely an essential service. Those who are using it are taking it to go to work and man our grocery stores and make sure that our residents are taken care of. They also include some of the most vulnerable people in our community. And at this point, I would like to put a motion forward that we waive all fares, continue to operate transit on perhaps it's a limited capacity, but I think at this time we need to continue. But I would like to see us waive all fares and encourage residents to enter from the end of the bus as they are in other municipalities.
I'd like
Yeah,
to ask
sure.
a question at some point.
Yeah.
Do we have a seconder for Councillor Post?
Councillor Peters.
I'd like to second that, please.
Yeah.
Councillor Peters is seconded. Now we'll have comment from
I'd like to ask a
councillors. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones, do you think it would be advantageous to reduce the operational hours, or should we just keep it as status quo?
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship to Councillor Sherwood, based on information that we have, the heaviest usage of the transit system seems to be at the start of the day and at the end of the day. So I don't think that reducing the hours would achieve what we need to by maintaining a transit system at this point.
Thank you.
Very good. Any other councillors wish to weigh in here?
I had just a quick question, Your Worship, to Mr. Jones.
Okay, Councillor Andrews and then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you
ahead,
very
sir.
much, Your Worship. Mr. Jones, I know that this is a very important part of our community. Do you have any sense of the numbers that are utilizing, the number of people that are utilizing the transit system at this point? I know that Councillor Post had indicated we've seen the importance of our vulnerable members of the community, and I think it's very important that we support everyone that we can. But do you have a sense of the decline of numbers?
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship to Councillor Andrews, we have seen a decline in numbers. Last week, we were seeing approximately 150 riders a day. But then again, it was March break, schools weren't in, and so it wasn't entirely unexpected had this been a normal time for there to be a decrease last week. Appreciate that with things are evolving quickly, and it sounds like over the next several days they will continue to evolve. But with that said, we do understand that there continues to be a usage of the bus by seniors, by youth. One of the challenges that we faced is that a number of the locations where transit passes are available for purchase are difficult to access, including our own town
Yes.
hall. And perhaps this is also in favor of the argument of waiving fees for a period of time. In fact, we had Community Living Dufferin reach out to us earlier today to ask about where they could buy tickets. That tells me that there's still that component of the community that is continuing to look to use the transit system.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Jones.
Okay, Councillor Post, if we could ask, did you put a timeline on this? Was this 90 days? What were your thoughts?
I think right now, for me, it's indefinitely at this point until we can get ourselves out of the state of emergency that the town is in. Perhaps we want to start with a 90-day caveat and then reassess it. I think that, as Mr. Jones alluded to, I think that in the coming days, weeks, months, we may also need to look at our time of day ridership and keep an eye on those numbers. But I think for the time being, I'd like to see it stay at the same levels that it's operating. As Mr. Jones indicated, it's busiest at the beginning and at the end. So perhaps in my motion, we can start it as a 90-day waiving of fees, and then we can reassess after that.
Good point.
Okay, very good. Council, yes, is it Councillor Taylor?
Yes. Thank you,
Yes,
Your
sir.
Worship.
Go ahead.
I completely agree with Councillor Post in the way she's framed it. The only thing that I would add to what Councillor Post is saying is I've never seen an issue move this fast in my time on the planet, and I think we're going to find out more tomorrow, and I think we're going to know even more in the next 2 weeks. And although 90 days is fine, Councillor Post, I think it makes sense. It's just, it might be completely irrelevant. Like if we were going to review it in 30 days, I think we'd be just as fine. The sentiment is still there, is that we want people to be able to get around, but the reality is, where are they going at this point? I realize we've got some essential services in terms of grocery stores and whatnot, but really, people, if you're watching this, you shouldn't be on the bus. You shouldn't be going anywhere. You should be in your homes.
Right. On that note, Mr. Jones, could you just reiterate any increased cleaning protocol on our transit system? Mr. Jones.
Yes, Your Worship. Certainly, we've increased our cleaning protocol. Our drivers are wiping the buses down several times during a shift. All regularly touched surfaces and so forth are being wiped down. But of course, like any other facility or any other place that's being accessed by the public, people have to be cautious of their own and on their own and make sure that they are taking whatever measures they need to keep themselves safe. I don't know that any level of cleaning would be sufficient based on what we've seen.
Yes, sir. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Any further comment from councillors before we call the vote? All right, Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Thank you, councillors. As we move on, so there's a line here, other rates and fees. Do councillors want to weigh in on this? So do any councillors have any other additional suggestions on ways that we can assist our residents?
Councillor Peters.
Councillor Peters, and then Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure there'll be a few topics covered here in the next few minutes, but it would seem to me that the other major piece that we collect on the water side, and I think we're going to talk about electricity as well, but if we're waiving any fees and penalties on those rates as well as property taxes, they seem to go hand in hand to me. So I think a similar motion on the water infrastructure side makes sense.
Yes, I think as you've probably seen, Councillor Peters, Orangeville Hydro is waiving fees on collection of penalties and interest. I don't know 100% that that's including our water. I presume we have to pass a motion here that we would also pass.
I would second that motion, Your
That's why I brought it
Worship.
up.
Okay, great. So we have a seconder on water, and this is waiving of penalties and interest. Is there a period of time, Councillor Peters? 90 days?
90 days. 90 days.
Same period.
90 days, okay. Any further comment on this before we call a vote? councilors?
Did not Councillor Taylor not want to speak on this?
Councillor Taylor, you had another fee
No,
suggestion?
my topic is a different one. Thank you.
Okay, let's vote on this then. Councillor Andrews,
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood,
Yes.
Councillor McIntosh,
Yes.
Councillor Peters,
Yes.
Councillor Post,
Yes.
Councillor Taylor,
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. And I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor McIntosh, I called you councillor there. My apologies.
I know who you meant.
Okay, moving along. Councillor Taylor, you have another suggestion, sir.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Your Worship. I have a few minor ones, and maybe we'll just handle as we go. So my first one is the collection of garbage. It seems now we're all in our homes, and Councillor Peters, I can see you cringing as I say this, but the garbage collection is going to go up. Hopefully the recycling does too. But my suggestion would be is that we either do away with or move to a 2-bag system for the foreseeable future.
Isn't that a county issue?
It is.
Well, we have 2 people on county. It's got to be looked at, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I can assure you, Councillor Taylor, that Deputy Mayor McIntosh and I will be bringing that discussion to County Council. Again, you know, I think the only motion probably we could pass here is that we would be in support as a council in that decision. However, let's hear from all of our councillors. I'm sure Councillor Peters would like to weigh in on this.
Yeah, certainly. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Taylor, for bringing it up. I support raising the limit. I'd be hesitant to go to an infinite limit. I think doubling the amount should hopefully be sufficient. I understand this is not going to be top of mind for most residents at the moment, but it is still something I think people should be aware of, and removing the cap altogether may be sort of a dangerous precedent when we end up returning to 1 bag when things have calmed down again. So I would certainly support moving to 2 bags. I recognize that there's a lot of limitations on our ability to make certain purchases and take certain actions.
Right. The other component of extra bag, I guess, if we're going to pass it, there'll be no bag tag required. That's something that we'll have a discussion at the council, county council level. So Councillor Peters, you're seconding Councillor Taylor's motion, correct?
I would if we're suggesting moving to a 2-bag.
2-bag system. Councillor Taylor, is that correct?
I think that's a great first step. So thank you,
Okay.
Councillor Peters. I appreciate your support.
Can I ask a question?
Your worship?
So let's go with Councillor Post and then Councillor Andrews. Councillor Post.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this is a great initiative. I do think that we need to recognize that people are home and going to be producing more waste, definitely. My question is perhaps to you, Your Worship, and to Deputy Mayor. Is there a county council meeting scheduled at this point where this will be brought up? I just want to make sure that the communication is going to be correct with the residents who are understanding that what we're passing right now is not an official thing until it goes through county council. So just is there something scheduled right now?
I'm not aware. I think the county is been dealing with priorities, social service issues and what have you. I would expect in the next week or so that we'll hear that there will be a county council meeting. There's definitely a need for it. Yeah,
Your Worship,
Deputy
I
Mayor
can speak to that.
McIntosh, yes.
Yeah, I was told this morning that there will be a meeting next week.
Okay, very good, sir.
Your Worship.
Yes, Mr. Brennan.
Your Worship, I would recommend that council, now that you're debating the collection and the numbers of bags, I would recommend that council raise a motion that for such, and we would forward that motion to county council for consideration.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay,
Perfect,
so
thank you.
let's amend that motion, Councillor Taylor, if that's okay with you?
Yes, it's great. Thank you, Your
Okay.
Worship.
Any further comment from councillors? Councillor Post,
Yes,
did you
I
want to
had-
weigh in? Or Andrews, I'm sorry.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Go ahead,
Thank you very
sir.
much, Your Worship. And again, just to echo Councillor Post's point, I think what's very important is the sequence. You know, as we have people who are now home and have been home for, a week or in some cases 2 weeks, that accumulation of garbage is certainly starting to compound. And I know residents in my community here specifically have asked a little bit about that. I think what's important is the sequence with the process through county council. And if there's any pressure that can be put on, I know this is way down the list, but I know that both you and Deputy Mayor McIntosh have that opportunity. And to Mr. Brennan's point too as well, I think that the motion has been put forth. The only piece is again the length of time. Are we talking about a 90-day period here as well?
Yes, I would
Okay.
suggest, Councillor Taylor, can we make that 90 days?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah.
Your Worship, if I
Okay,
may.
yes, go ahead, sir. Mr. Taylor.
You know, I imagine we're getting to more minor issues, and maybe I'm being dramatic or selfish, but I would hope County Council could meet this week.
That would be,
Well,
that would be something.
We will make that request. I agree with you, sir.
We need urgency.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Fair enough. Any further comment on this particular motion, which is to send a letter to County Council saying the town of Orangeville is in support of going to a 2-bag limit for a 90-day period? Any further comment?
None.
Okay, I'm going to call the vote. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Your Worship.
Mayor Brown, yes. Councillor Taylor, you had another suggestion, sir. Go
Yes,
ahead.
thank you, Your Worship. My other one is, and here we are, the dates are starting to run together here, but we're in late March, and it's not much longer till winter parkings are gone by the wayside. However, given that we have multi-family members living in homes and spaces at a premium, I would suggest, given where we are in the season and the gravity of our situation, that we cease the winter parking requirements as of now.
Deputy Mayor would second that.
Yeah, I think that's an easy one. I would think at this moment in time that Orangeville Police Service is probably, that's the furthest thing on their mind, but I agree with you, Councillor Taylor. So if there's any further comment on that, we can call a vote at this moment. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Okay, councillors, any other thoughts? Okay, Councillor Taylor, one more time. Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. A minor piece, however, we still want to ensure that our essential businesses, which seems to me at this point would be the grocery stores, and I know we'll all get more clarity on this as we go forward, but my feeling is that we should exempt noise bylaws to ensure that deliveries can occur at all times and that these businesses aren't disrupted in any sort of fashion.
I believe the province has already passed that, Councillor Taylor. So
Thank you, Your Worship.
We're good. Anything further, councillors?
I do have a comment that I'd like to just share about the business community, Your Worship.
Councillor Andrews, and then back to Councillor Taylor. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, thank you very much. In consultation with the manager of the Economic Development Office, and I know the town has put out communication to our business community about ways that they can end up supporting their employees. Further information is going to be coming from that department as we get further information from the federal and provincial governments. That department has been very good through the communications department at the town to present information through the town's website and through other portals. And again, I have to commend the town staff for putting that information, not only for the business community, but to hopefully put at ease. And again, it's probably not even the best choice of words at this point, but at least to provide information as timely as is possible. Further information is going to be coming through. And again, I just want to commend the town staff for being absolutely exemplary at this time and trying to get that information to the business community as quickly as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. I have a question for yourself and the Deputy Mayor, if I may. There is some confusion in the community regarding hydro and specifically the off-peak payments. I'm wondering if, just as a public service announcement, the two of you could speak to what the plan is for Orangeville Hydro, either immediately or moving forward, what that will be for off-peak payments. And I appreciate it.
I've had direct conversations with the president of Orangeville Hydro, Rob Coco. He has been in teleconferences with the Minister of Energy, Rickford, also with the Ontario Energy Board. Orangeville Hydro is billed energy costs by the OEB. They control the cost of hydro.
Sorry to interrupt, Your Worship. Could you please expand what the acronym OEB stands for?
Ontario Energy Board.
Thank you.
They are the ones who set rates, and they are the ones who will decide whether they're going to go to off-peak hours 24/7. I can tell you, Mr. Coco said that discussion was had last week. The province, as you can well imagine, is busy with a lot of other important priorities. Mr. Coco told me that energy being billed today, being used today will not be billed into April, and that if that decision comes down from the province, that it'll be very simple for their accounting staff to change the energy rate for the bill going out in April. So I think we've got a few days yet. I think we can expect some other things from the province, but just to make people understand, Orangeville Hydro does not determine the rate that gets charged to our residents. Deputy Mayor McIntosh, did you have anything further?
No, it's just unfortunate that we have no say in it at this time. I'm hoping the province will come through with that eventually. Here's hoping.
Mr. Coco did say that the conversation was positive in that regard. So we'll keep our fingers crossed that sooner than later the province makes that call. So thank you, Councillor Taylor, for
Your Worship, if I could speak, please.
Yep. Yes, Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Your Worship. Just to piggyback off the fact that our water bill is included in the hydro bill, there has been pressure or conversation amongst residents about changing the water and water sewage rates. And at this time, what are the thoughts of council with respect to the current rates being charged for water and wastewater?
Well, my personal thoughts are, having talked to both Mr. Jones and Mr. Brennan, is that our water rates are set as cost recovery. There's no profit here. There's no negotiation on this rate. It's determined with consultation on a 5-year plan. Now, Mr. Jones is on the line. I'd like him to weigh in on that, but I personally think we have to continue to charge because it's billed on a cost recovery basis. But councillors, we're all in this together, so if there's somebody else who feels something differently, let's hear it. But let's hear from Mr. Jones first of all. Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, you're correct. With water and sewer rates, we are in a cost recovery basis. We hired Watson and Associates, and they recently made a presentation to council with respect to how they came up with the rate structure for the coming 5 years. Water and wastewater, of course, is one of our essential services. We will continue to provide safe drinking water and treat the sewage as we always have, even during this crisis. So our expenses in those areas will not decrease. And if we decrease our revenues, that's revenue that we'll simply have to collect more of at a later time. And, you know, depending on circumstances, if there wasn't enough revenue, we would need to tap into reserves or get into some borrowing to cover off the costs of providing our services.
Okay.
Yes, so Your Worship, just to follow up on the people that are following at home, basically what we're saying is that because we have approved rates at a cost recovery, we're not able to readdress those rates. However, we have previously posted a motion to not charge penalty and interest on those water and sewer rates that are tying in with what's currently happening with the hydro bills. So there will be a 3-month waiving of penalty and interest on those water bill portions.
Right. Some important point. Yes, Councillor Peters.
Sorry, not to interrupt. Through you to Mr. Jones. As I recall, water rates went down slightly on a cubic meter basis, but we did introduce that cap at 20 cubic meters, understanding that household consumption may go up where it might have been spread out across the town at businesses and industry. Mr. Jones, can you speak to when that 20 cubic meter cap was or will be put in place, and whether or not removing that cap may offer a slight financial relief to our citizens.
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Peters, that cap at 20 cubic meters per month was put into place as of January 1st, retroactively, and so that's in place now. The way that our consultant calculated the rate structure, they were looking at the different amounts that people used, and the decrease that we looked at in the per cubic meter charge was we were allowed to do that because we were going to be collecting a little bit extra from those people who used over 20 cubic meters a month in an effort to try and reduce usage. If we relax that, we would then no longer be on a cost recovery basis. The options that were brought forward to council were to essentially keep the per cubic meter rate the same and to keep the threshold at which we would charge an increasing block rate at 50 cubic meters per day. We were able to reduce the per cubic meter rate when we reduced the threshold to 20 cubic meters a month. So by putting it back to 50 without increasing the per cubic meter rate, we would no longer be collecting fees on a cost recovery basis.
Thank you. Any other comment from councillors? Okay, so we didn't have a motion there on any break on water. I think on a cost recovery basis. As we've determined here, we have limited resources. The federal and provincial governments have got much greater resources than we do and abilities to borrow. We're hoping that our residents are going to receive electricity rate a break in that break really is, it goes from to about 50% of the peak rate, the low rate. So there'll be some significant savings on electricity. Let's hope that comes sooner than later, as discussed. So any other thoughts about ways that we can help our residents? Councillors.
Your Worship.
Councillor Taylor.
So if I may, we decided as a team that we would send a note to County Council regarding an issue. I merely ask, would it also make sense that we send a note as a council to the province based on the hydro off-peak payment request, and say that as a council, that's what we're recommending and that's our wish, and please enact.
I would second that.
As quickly as possible.
Yeah. Good idea, Councillor Taylor.
Seconded.
Okay. Any further comment on that before we call a vote to send a letter to the Minister of Energy on this item?
Your
okay,
Worship.
Let's have, yes, Mr. Brennan.
Your Worship, through you, I would also recommend that we would send that notice to our neighboring municipalities, the county, and maybe other municipalities throughout Ontario.
Good point.
And
for support.
And,
RMP and MPP.
Yes. And well,
Definitely.
I think our MPP for sure, but we certainly, for notification purposes, are going to send it to our MP as well, of course. Okay, so let's call the vote on this motion to send a letter to the Minister of Energy asking for off-peak hours to be put in place 24 hours a day during this crisis. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Okay. So we're down into 5.4 now. 5.5. Yes.
Is there more issues to cover in that, Your Worship? Sorry to interrupt.
Unless you have one, sir.
I do, sir.
Okay.
If I may, through yourself and potentially Deputy Mayor, I'd like to understand what our fire plan is for the next period of time. These professionals are in a building, all working together. They're there 24 hours a day, and I'd like to understand what the plan is for that facility and the protection of Orangeville residents. Would anybody be able to speak to that?
With respect to what, Councillor Taylor? Just. We're
in a situation where we have to have social distancing. These people are sleeping in the same room. They're eating in the same area. It's a requirement of their profession. And yet I would assume that they're essential service. It could be a provincial issue, Your Worship. This is all new to all of us as we're going along, but you know, I do have an update from the police that I'll share, but I'm not up to date on what would happen with our fire department.
Right. I did have a conversation with Chief Morden a couple of days ago, but I'm going to pass this over to Mr. Osmond. Mr. Osmond, could you comment on this, please?
Yes, Your Worship. Through you to council. First off, our operations at fire is going along as per shift and as per the 24-hour schedule. All staff right now, the building itself is closed off to the public and no one can go in the building except for firefighters. The facility is in complete isolation. The operation of the staff themselves, now they do business in the building. They too are sanitizing and following the social distance. When they go out on site or go to a response, they would be addressed appropriately, and they would be masked in some cases, depending on the incident. When they come back into the facility, they do likewise. Things get put in its proper place, they get sanitized, and they go on to business. From a perspective of sleeping, the quarters are set up so you don't have to be in a facility sleeping. In actual fact, when they're on a 24-hour schedule right now, they're also training. And there's no issue with the sharing of space or being in close proximity to other staff.
Your Worship, I have a question.
Yes, go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, I'm just wondering, Your Worship, perhaps to Mr. Osmond, before they report to shift, is there any type of mechanism that we could do an assessment to ensure that when they come in, that they are feeling well, that they are not feverish or showing any signs or symptoms before they report to work? Is there a frontline person that maybe could do some type of assessment as they come to work?
Mr. Osmond.
Yes, good question, Your Worship. Yes, through Councillor Sherwood. We do assessment now. They are screened as they come to work. They are screened coming on to shift. And when they come back from calls, if different things go on the call, they're screened pretty much on a call for call basis, or when they're coming in to change shift.
Your Worship.
I just wanted to comment, and I was going to call on Deputy Mayor McIntosh because in our last county council meeting, Deputy Mayor asked a question about tiered response. Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yeah, one of the things they're doing is in regards to medical calls, they've limited the type of medical calls they're going to. So you'll probably find the calls have dropped 50% now because they're not doing the regular medical calls, just as a precaution. And also any 911 call is being screened. So they're asking them if they have symptoms, etc. But I know for a fact that they're not doing near the medical calls they were 2 weeks ago.
Makes sense. We need to keep our first responders well in the event of an emergency. So thank you. So Councillor Taylor, you mentioned you had some information from the police service. Would you like to comment, sir?
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. I just want to reassure all citizens. So the police are saying that they are above the curve with protective equipment. This is, I spoke with Chief Kalinsky, and this is Deputy Chief Guilfoy's words today. And they are actually in a meeting as we're having this council meeting, talking about staffing the front lines and how communications will work and making sure that they're up to speed. But it's a message of reassurance, and citizens should know that they're being protected, and the police are still available if they're required.
Very good. Thank you.
Your Worship, I have a question.
Yes, Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a time or place, but I was wondering about our playgrounds. I've had a lot of calls from people in regards to shutting our playgrounds down, or if they should be shut down. What's your thoughts? And I don't know if a sign is
part
good
of
enough.
a provincial order today, I believe. Mr. Osmond.
Your Worship, through Deputy Mayor, all playgrounds are closed, and we have all playgrounds signed as of today. There's signs on all of our play structures notifying the public they are closed, and The parks themselves are not closed. The parks, person can go for a walk or what the case would be, but the playground structures are closed and signed appropriately.
Your worship, can I ask a question to Mr. Osmond?
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, your worship. I thank you, Mr. Osmond, with letting us know there's signage. Is there any way of actually caution taping it off?
That's a good point, Councillor Sherwood.
Mr. Osmond.
We have been asked that question, and we're asking staff now to take a look at how we could do that. What would be our capacity to do that? And if we have materials to do that, we would put caution tape around all the units. And we're also looking at this, likewise doing the same with the benches that are on park sites.
Okay. Right. I was thinking snow fence would be a good thing too. If you've got, we're now coming into our snow season, and we do have some snow fence available, I believe. But we'll leave that up to you, Mr. Osmond. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillors, anything further that you'd like to talk about under this COVID-19 situation right now?
I have a quick point.
Councillor Andrews, go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much. I know, again, I've complimented the town staff for putting together a variety of information, and I think that that information has certainly been helpful. But I don't know if the message is getting through to everyone, and I don't know how we can get some of those portals of information that are critical to those that, again, are vulnerable, those that need help. And again, I don't want to put any more pressure on town staff to be responsible for fielding calls. I know each one of us have had a number of people within the community who are asking for support, and it varies. It varies from something that's quite serious to something that is in the minds of maybe helping a neighbor who needs to get something picked up at the local grocery store. Are there, or is there a list of different agencies that are here local that are also providing some support to those within the community? And I'm wondering if that information is available and can be posted and or even circulated in some way to some people that don't have the internet or are not necessarily savvy in this world for the perspective of getting information in a timely fashion. There's some people that don't even have a cell phone, and the only method of communication is, in fact, their landline. So just wanted to put that out to members of council and town staff.
Could I call on Ms. McKinney to give us an update on town communications? Ms. McKinney.
Thank you, through the mayor. So yes, we have put a lot of attention to our social channels and website, as you have mentioned. We recognize, however, that not everyone has access to electronic means. And so Sheila has been working with the teams on necessary messages for local media, town page as an example, so that we can reach a broader audience, but certainly open to suggestions. And one of the things Sheila and I was talking about is there previously was posters, but now that everyone's being asked to stay home, that could be distributed. Now that everyone's asked to stay home, that may be a moot point. And as it relates to local services, that's something that we've been working on, and we hope to have that information available soon on our site. Recognize we're not the lead on that.
Right.
Correct. Yes.
Also, I know Dufferin County has got a lot of information on their website about the services that they're providing. And I do know that Orangeville Food Bank is making a move this week on Friday. They are moving their operations to the Salvation Army Church at Town Line in Riddell. The sanctuary of the church is going to be where food will be stored. They'll be packaging food orders in the lobby area for those of you who've been in that church before. And they will be reaching out looking for some volunteers. They're planning to open 5 days a week. There will be a requirement of 10 or 11 volunteers for each day. So I wanted to put that out there. This will be a drive-up, drop-off of the food goods to these clients, and that will all be in place on Friday. They're collapsing a number of food providers, including I think the Shepherd's Cupboard and also the Salvation Army themselves, who are also running a food bank in their facility. So the food bank is ramping up, and I think we need to think about some support for them. And I was talking with Treasurer before. I was talking to CAO Brennan and also the clerk about how we can help get some money into the hands of some of these organizations that we know are doing good and are ramping up for what they know is a coming requirement. One of the ways to shift money would be to take some money out of contingency reserves and put it into our community grant program. The food bank is already a recipient of that, and from what I understand, this would be a fairly easy method of getting money into the hands of the food bank. They are going to need additional funds for purchase of perishable goods. I also spoke with Heather Hayes, the executive director, this morning, and I understand that they have purchased a building which has depleted their reserves. So I think as a community, we need to come together. I think we need to help the food bank, and I'd like to make a recommendation that we pull $100,000 out of our reserves, our contingency reserves, put them into our community grant program, and immediately offer $25,000 to the food bank to assist them as they ramp up for the need that they're going to have in the coming months. So if I could have some further comment from councillors on that motion that I'd like to make today.
Yeah, if I could just comment, Deputy Mayor.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
With the Blues and Jazz Festival not being a go this year, we recently gave them $17,000. Is that money that could be utilized for something like that?
Well, that was discussed this morning, Deputy Mayor. The announcement from Blues and Jazz is a postponement. And I spoke to the president of the Blues and Jazz Board of Directors, Josh Leach, on Friday, and our discussion was they're going to postpone, and they would hope that in sometime in the summer, when we hope and pray that this crisis washes through, that they'll be part of a town-wide celebration, and they would like to hold on to the money for the time being. If this crisis does ramp up worse than we are planning for right now, then I think we would have to address that and maybe ask for that money back. But I'm trying to think upbeat and positive right now. I would hope that we're going to come out of this problem in the next 2, 3, 4 months, and that we can start to get back to some semblance of normalcy in our town. So that's my response,
Okay.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh. Any further comments? Any further comments, councillors? I hope you all support the food bank and know that there's going to be quite a need there going forward. Any comments?
Worship.
Yes. Councillor Taylor?
Yes, if I may. Thank you, Your Worship. I do appreciate your commentary and the thoughtfulness of it. I'd like to just add on. I mean, we should always look at a full picture before we do anything. There's other agencies in town as well that are requiring some financial assistance. One of them in particular will be Theatre Orangeville. And so I'd like to address that. The immediate things that would need to be talked about would be IT, phone, internet access for home-based work. So if we could have our IT department look into that, I'd be appreciative. But there will also need to be some sort of help for that organization as we go forward, and I'm sure there'll be others as well.
Well, I appreciate that, but I think the theater is going, that's something down the road, Councillor Taylor. I think we have to worry about shelter. We have to worry about food right now. And I really think that the moving of $100,000 from contingency into community grant program and spending 25 of us gives us opportunity to look at other organizations who have an immediate need.
I agree.
So, yeah.
So, Your Worship, just to be clear, I don't disagree with your comments. I just want everybody to be aware there's other agencies that are going to be coming forth as well.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Absolutely.
Mayor Brown, I've got a question. Councillor
Yes.
Peters.
Councillor Peters.
The question's for you, actually, I guess. In your discussions with Ms. Hayes, was there a sense of what that number would provide when we talk about 25,000? Was that identified by her as a need? Does that cover 2-3 months? Could you give us a little more background?
She told me that going forward, they're going to need approximately $16,000 a month for purchasing of perishable goods based on their ramping up that they see and are forecasting. My thoughts were there's other organizations, and Councillor our Deputy Mayor McIntosh and I probably can take a similar request to county. My thoughts were at $16,000 a month. If we can pick up half of the cost, that would be 8,000 times 3, 24,000 or 25,000. Now, I understand that Ms. McKinney would like to weigh in here, so Ms. McKinney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to flag for your awareness while you're in this discussion that while we've been on this call, the province has announced $200 million to social services that will include food banks, charities, shelters, emergency services, and nonprofits. And I just thought that's information you should have relative to this. Excellent. Okay. Well, then maybe I want to amend my motion. I still would like to move some money into the community grant program, which we can quickly access if needed. Maybe we'll pull back on the cash request for the food bank until we understand their needs with the provincial announcement just made minutes ago. So,
Your Worship?
Yes, Councillor Sherwood.
I'm still wanting kind of to move forward to give them 25,000 because we do not know how quickly the Orangeville Food Bank will have access to the funds through the province. So I think that would be very good of us to provide them immediate funding.
Okay, I do not disagree. I think they will always be in need, and I'm very happy with the way that organization runs. I think they do an excellent service for our community. So,
Your
let's
Worship.
put that. Yes, Councillor Taylor, go ahead.
If I may again, and for the people watching at home and my fellow councillors, I'm not debating about the benevolence of the food bank and the need to supply. I'm curious. 25,000 would buy a lot of food. Yes. Is that what's required now? Like potentially, you know, a lot of us know the board members on the food bank. If we were to come forward with something smaller for now, and then had more facts in play and understood exactly what was required, you know, it might make a little more sense. And again, I'm not saying I wouldn't be in favor of the food bank. I just think potentially we give 3 to 5 now, and then have a different discussion at our next council meeting.
I think that would be the way to go. Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor.
I would still like to take into consideration my original thought of the 25,000 immediately. I do not think they'll misuse those funds.
If I may, Deputy Mayor, I think we've lost the mayor, which means the meeting would defer to you.
Correct.
Yeah, my feeling, I don't disagree with the 25, but I like Todd's idea if we give them, say, 10 now. If the province does come through with this money, they could have too much. Like, we can do it at the next council meeting.
I think the point is that how quickly is the province going to be able to get those funds to the organizations that do require it? We understand the announcement was just made, but at the same time, the timeliness is important. I feel comfortable with your point, Deputy Mayor.
Is there a motion on the floor right now then?
I don't believe there is.
You're Deputy Mayor, you're running the meeting, just to be clear. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I make the motion that we do what the mayor's.
I'm sorry, I'm getting echoing.
Yeah, sorry, I lost you.
I didn't hear the Deputy Mayor, sorry.
I would make a motion that we do 10,000 now out of that fund immediately, and then we look at it in the next couple of meetings.
So, Your Worship, do we not have to first of all have a motion to move a specific amount into the funds and then allocate the funds?
That is correct. That's my understanding.
Okay. Mr. Mayor, can we pause to make sure the clerk's still on the line? I think she's waving us down.
Okay,
yes, it's okay. I'm back on.
Madam Clerk, are you back? Okay. So again, $100,000 was the suggestion here for us to transfer from contingency reserves into our community grant. fund, and from what I've just back now, a deputy mayor has suggested a $10,000 advance immediately to the food bank, and we'll wait and see what further requests that they have and other community groups may have going forward.
I definitely second that.
Okay, so Deputy Mayor McIntosh has made that motion. We've got Councillor Sherwood seconding it. Any further comment from councillors on that motion?
No.
Okay, let's call the vote. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes. Councillor Peters, go right ahead, sir.
Just on that topic, and again, for people watching and part of the messaging and communication, how will we address the dispersal of the rest of those funds? Is this something that staff or council have to bring to our attention? Should we be taking suggestions from the community? How do people find out about this, and how would we further distribute those funds?
Well, my personal opinion is we have to be very judicious on this. I think food is of high priority, and getting it to those in need. I'm struggling trying to think of another community group right now that has an immediate need for money. Now, Meals on Wheels, I did inquire to them, and I found out that Meals on Wheels, actually their need has dropped. Many of the seniors that have been receiving meals by Meals on Wheels have gone to live with family, and so Meals on Wheels actually is dropped in terms of the number of deliveries that they're making. But let's I would just say let's leave it open, Councillor Peters and the rest of council. We all are common sense people, and when a good community group comes forward with a need, I think we will address it appropriately at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Your worship, perhaps I could ask something?
Yes,
I don't know. Does the clerk need more specification in the motion that these funds be used for safety and food needs? Do we need to be more specific as to what these funds will be used for in our motion?
Madam Clerk, do you want to a little bit more clarity there?
What I will do, if it's at the will of council, is we'll just indicate that it's supposed to be used for funding anything with respect to our emergency needs at this time.
I think that would be the right wording. Councillor Sherwood?
Yes, okay. Perfect.
If I may, Your Worship,
yes,
it would be at the discretion of council, though, would it not? Like the way Ms. Landry.
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. That's our understanding. Okay.
Perfect. Your Worship.
Yes, Mr. Brennan.
Could I recommend that any request coming into Town Hall would run through the community grant process, that it's a rolling process? Likewise, if some community members directed to council or members of council, they would forward to town staff, and we would prepare the required report and bring it forward to council. There's something that I was thinking about earlier today, and that is how do our seniors and some of our people with mobility issues get their essentials, and maybe there's some money to put aside for direct pickup, whether that's through taxi service or some other service. But I think there's going to be a need going forward to help people get out to get their essentials, notwithstanding the free fares at our public transit system now. Anyway, let's go ahead on that one. Let's vote on this. Councillor Andrews?
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh?
Yes.
Councillor Peters?
Yes.
Councillor Post?
Yes.
Councillor Taylor?
Yes.
Mayor Brown? Yes. Councillor Taylor, go ahead, sir.
Sorry, everyone, I've got a long list and we're just about through. My fellow dog owners and dog walkers would like to have some clarification regarding the dog park on Hanson. You know, I think if at all possible, I think people would like to keep this open. I'd love to be able to do that. Just not sure what the requirements are, and I think it needs to be discussed in a public forum so that we can give the right messaging to those who are using it.
I think we're going to find that the province is going to override us, and a number of municipalities are already closing their dog parks. CAO Brennan, can you comment on this?
Your Worship, this is an issue that we've been following since last week. There was a couple reports out this weekend with the concerns that this virus may be also transmitted through dogs, and some recommendations out there to keep social distance with your canine friend as well. As with everything in this crisis, the tracking of information and the different sources of information makes it a little more complicated. But we'll be reaching out to our public health officials for Wellington and Dufferin Guelph to figure out and to get directions from our Chief Medical Officer of Health. But I'm assuming that with all precautions, because we cannot control, once people get in there, it's very hard to control. And with a dog running around, how can we stop that dog from approaching another dog or another human? So I would say, as with some other municipalities, it may be cautiously correct to look at closing the park itself. Mr. Osmond may have some other input, as I know he's been researching it as well.
Mr. Osmond.
Well, I won't add much to what Mr. Brennan has just indicated, but he's correct. Right now, there seems to be a mixed approach out there. Some communities have closed dog parks. Some have said, be cautious when in the area. The issue we have is not unlike what's going on in some of the walkways where you have a lot of people walking and taking to the trails. The fact is that we have to practice social distancing, and it's correct that we have right now we have an indication that the passing of a virus from one animal to another could be involved as well. So the best approach right now is to keep your dog on a leash and practice social distancing with the animal as well with the human. And as far as the dog park is concerned, right now, if a person goes into the dog park, we would pretty much limit it to one dog running free at one time, and then we'd have to change it up. So we're taking a look at this now in the next few hours, because I have staff taking a look at whether we can sign that particular park and allow the opportunity for one person at a time to enter. But again, it's a changing activity right now, and we could have a situation from government that basically could close down some of those activities as well.
So if some of you don't already know, Island Lake Conservation Area is being closed. It's unfortunate because I thought that was a one last refuge for us, but that decision has been made, and Island Lake will be closed to visitors as well. Councillor Taylor.
Your Worship, all these decisions are difficult, and it's funny, the dog park's not a big deal, but it just seems like it's one more thing on top of one more thing as we go. Based what I'm hearing from the people who I respect their information, I wonder if we should make a motion to close the dog park then. We can't be half pregnant here.
Right. Mr. Osmond, what are your thoughts on that, sir?
Your Worship, through to Councillor Taylor, I guess we're in a situation where it's if we can close it in the case of walking a dog, you can walk your dog on any sidewalk and follow good practices of keeping your animal on a leash and social distance your animal as well as yourself. And if we do that, then there's no reason why a person can't get out and walk your animal, just not in the dog park. Right. So you could close the dog park and due diligence perspective, you could do that and let people understand that you can still walk your animal, but please do it on a sidewalk or on a trail within the community.
I would second Councillor Taylor's motion. I believe we should be closing the dog park. Councillors, would you like to weigh in on this before we vote?
I'm fine.
No. Okay, we're going to call the vote then. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh, excuse me.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
A very sad yes.
Yeah, Mayor Brown, I love that dog park, but unfortunately, I'm going to vote yes as well. Thank you. Okay, councillors, do you have any other items that you would like to discuss today on our COVID-19 crisis meeting?
Could I just bring something up?
Deputy Mayor,
Please?
yes, sir.
We've done a lot of good things here this afternoon. How soon will we get this out to the public, and how?
Ms. McKinney.
Thank you. Through the mayor, I've been keeping notes naturally, but typically Sheila is also watching and keeping notes. So you can expect there will be a news release issued today, as well as the social media updates that we tend to do in sections. And if you prefer, or if you'd like to supplement that by us sending you messages that you can also share, we can accommodate that as well.
I think that would be great if you would do that. Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Appreciate that.
Can I make one comment as well?
Yes, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. So ahead of our council meeting earlier this morning, all of council, as well as the clerk's office, received correspondence from a resident who had compiled a whole list of concerns from the community of things that were happening and things that residents would like to see. Now, this came out quite quickly right before our meeting, so I know a lot of us didn't have a chance to dissect it or really have a look at it. So I would just move forward a motion, if it's okay with council, with the clerk's office, that we receive the correspondence from Mr. Williams and direct town staff to just go through the list of residents' concerns, and perhaps at our next council meeting we can discuss them a little more clearly, or put together a lot of the stuff that was in there that I saw at first glance was not necessarily under our purview. But perhaps we could put it together in an appropriate correspondence for the right level of government to show that we're listening to these concerns and we understand them, and that we're looking to move them forward.
Right. From what I saw, and I did go through the entire letter, Mr. Williams had compiled a number of suggestions from residents received through Facebook posts, etc. So thank you to Mr. Williams for compiling that, and there is some very good ideas and some good information in there. A lot of it is out of our purview, but I agree with Councillor Post that we should receive the document and for further review by council and staff. Councillor Taylor. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, Your Worship. I wonder if we could also set up a connection point through the town website, similar to what we did for the OPP. OPS discussion, where people could weigh in with their comments and sober second thought, and we're learning things as we go and new issues are arising, just to allow the public to have direct interaction with council on this important matter.
That's a great idea.
Ms. McKinney, can we set up a Q&A type portal there on our website?
Through the mayor, yes, we can do that.
Great, thank you.
Your Worship, I just wanted to ask a question.
Councillor Sherwood.
Will there be an opportunity for it to be implemented, since we're likely going to be doing these electronic type of council meetings, I would imagine, for several more times? Will we be allowing public to have a question period?
I've spoken to IT, Mr. Bonato. Maybe are you willing to weigh in here, sir? I know you've been working on this. It's unfortunate that we are not able to engage the public, but I believe that is the task at hand, and that IT is working hard on that. Mr. Bonato?
We are working on it. We will attempt to do it. The biggest issue right now with getting the public to weigh in is the YouTube is on a 5-minute delay from what we are seeing here live.
Okay. All right.
But if we have a designated question period time, perhaps people could, if they see the agenda a few days before, compile some of their questions and be submitted to the clerk then?
I think that's probably the way we would go, Councillor Sherwood. I think that's an excellent idea. Let our town residents send in questions to be vetted by the clerk and compiled in, and we will go over them question by question during our sessions. I think that's
I believe Ms. McKinney would like to respond to that as well.
Ms. McKinney.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say something very similar to your points, but we could certainly set up an email, because I recognize the challenges currently associated with YouTube, and I could have someone monitoring the email during the meeting real time as well.
Okay,
That would be
excellent.
very helpful.
Well, I think before our next meeting, we'll get that out to the public and how we're going to make sure that they're part of our meetings. Councillor Taylor.
I was just going to make the point. I think all of us are wanting public input, needing public input, and all of us are tuned in with the community in different ways. My instant messenger is going off frequently as we're sitting here, and the dog park is not my question; it's a resident's question. So there has been ways to get these questions into this meeting, and maybe that is something that we can encourage people to do while we're figuring out the technology as well.
Right. Good. Another item I wanted to bring up to council to discuss it this morning with the clerk and CAO is committee meetings. My personal opinion is that we should just cancel committee meetings for the next 30 days. I think there's other priorities, and I don't see that any of our committees need to meet in the next 30 days. So I'll just throw that out there. I'd like other councillors to weigh in.
I would like to just make a comment, Your Worship.
Mr. Andrews. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know that, again, I brought this up earlier and I was commending the EDC office for the communication. Again, with the paramount issue that we're dealing with here, I know our business community at all levels is being impacted. And I know that members of that particular committee, which is the BDAC committee, has been very clear in the possibility of at least digesting the information that the government, be that the federal and the provincial governments are announcing, be that on an hourly, daily basis. And I do respect the fact that, holding off on any meetings whatsoever for 30 days, but I think the opportunity to at least have consultation with some of those members is important. And I think that, very similar to what has been shared about the opportunity for members of the community to share their particular comments or questions, I know that there are some that within the business community are certainly asking for some further clarification. I'd just like to point out that the EDC office, as much as the office is not open at this point, they are available to respond to the business community through emails. So I think that that probably might be the best way at this point without holding any meetings to cover off all the bases.
Yeah, Councillor Andrews, I've been thinking about that. I know our small business community is reeling from what's going on right now, and I'm wondering if we could put together some sort of a town hall meeting, much like we're having right now, where we bring in some experts who can assist with helping small businesses navigate these rough waters they're in right now. And I'm thinking about maybe a chartered accountant, insurance person, maybe somebody from the BIA, and of course BDAC, but a similar format to this, to talk to our local business community and put out whatever programs are available to them to help them get through this tough time.
That's an excellent point. I know that, again, some of the small business operators, and some are very small, but some who are some of our robust employers in our community are also asking for some questions. And so I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Yes, Your Worship. I just wanted to give my fellow councillors and our citizens an update. So we did, for the Police Services Board, pass a motion a while back that it would be allowed to have closed door meetings, our closed session meetings via phone conference. And we did do that. We had a closed session. Unfortunately, the open session was canceled. And now that we're using this forum, maybe it's something that the Police Services Board could look into for the open session as well. But I think it's really key. There's some critical dates that are approaching for us in terms of a transition and items that really can't sit if we can. And I recognize the situation we're in, but it would be my intention to continue to push that committee forward and try and meet deadlines that we've committed to as a council.
Right. So
could I ask a question, Your Worship?
Yes. Let me ask Madam Clerk, Councillor Sherwood first. So there are some committees that are important. I recognize Councillor Taylor and Police Service Board has some important items to deal with, but there are a number of committees that. So maybe we, should we leave this in the hands of the clerk to come to council with recommendations for allowing committees to, but I don't know the protocol there. So Madam Clerk, can you talk to this, please?
Certainly, I think it would be appropriate appropriate, I will reach out to the staff support for the various committees to determine whether there are any items that are coming forward that need immediate attention. And then we could base our decision in terms of those needs moving forward. And also, as we indicated earlier, IT has been working very hard to ensure that we're able to have council functioning, and our first priority is to have council functioning together with that public access input taken into consideration. And as council would have seen in the report, you have to do likewise for committees. So they also have to be available to the public to participate. So as a priority first, what I will do is reach out to the respective secretaries of the various committees, see if there are any matters that need to be addressed immediately, and make a decision based on that, on when a committee meeting will be held.
Right.
Your worship.
So
Your worship.
I think, yes, Councillor Sherwood in a sec. I guess what I should do then probably is withdraw that comment and potential motion to stop committees and leave it in the hands of the clerk to determine the priorities and necessity for having meetings. Councillor Sherwood, go ahead.
Yes, Your Worship, I'm glad that you withdrew that, because one of my concerns was that the Heritage Committee has to make some decisions that would enable certain projects to move forward. And I would certainly not like to see projects being held up because we haven't met. So I would assume that part of the procedure bylaw will allow us to do committee meetings on a per required basis, similar to what we're doing now, so that we could still move forward with things that need to be decided.
Yeah, this may be a moot point. We may be all locked in our houses soon. So I hope that's not the case, but it's certainly a concern. Any further comments from councillors?
Your worship.
Yes, Mr. Brennan.
CEO. I think we also have to distinguish between a committee and a board. Police Services Board, Library Board, and the BIA are boards rather than committees. And I know the clerk is well aware of it, and we'll take that under consideration as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I think we're kind of at the end of our agenda here, councillors. I want to make a comment to the public. I'm sorry, Madam Clerk.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I just need you to go back with respect to the motion that was put on the floor by Councillor Post, second by Deputy Mayor McIntosh, with respect to receiving the correspondence from Jeremy Williams and having those concerns forwarded to staff and council, etc.
Yes. My apologies. Okay.
Thank you. I was just going to ask that question.
Thank you, Councillor Post. Let's vote on that. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Okay, so we're getting towards the end of our meeting, hopefully. I did want to make a statement to our residents. For those of you who studied philosophy and what have you, there's something called Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and a number of you out there will recognize this. The first level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs are food, clothing, shelter, and air. So what everybody has to understand, what the province has been doing, or what we've done today, is ensure that people are safe in where they are. The province is decreed there'll be no evictions. So people are safe in their homes for the time being. We're deferring our utility costs, hydro and water. We are helping people with their taxes to defer them. The food issues have to be resolved, but we're trying to make people feel safe. Nobody's going to be throwing you out of your house. Nobody's going to be turning off your power or your water. And the town and the province is mobilizing to make sure that food is available for people in the event that this crisis gets more severe. So I just wanted to put that out there. Everybody's okay. Let's think, envision positively what's going to happen over the next 3 or 4 months, that we're going to come out of this, and our community is going to be resilient, and we're going to celebrate the winning this war that is running rampant through the world right now. So I just want to make that statement. Any other councillors wish to make a statement before we start to wrap this up?
I just would like to say
Councillor
something
Andrews,
quickly.
go right ahead, sir.
Yep. Again, I've repeated this probably a couple of times. I want to thank the town staff who have been exemplary in committing long hours, long discussions. I think that the community itself, some who are not aware, may have criticized some things about this council. This team has been working diligently to ensure the safety of our community, and I have to again commend everyone from yourself, Mayor Brown, to the CAO and the rest of the town staff. They have been exceptional at this time and continue to be.
I agree.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Okay, councillors, we need to vote on bylaws here. So this is a recommendation that the bylaws listed below be read 3 times and passed. That is the bylaw to govern proceedings of council and committees, the one that allows electronic meetings. Second bylaw was the authorization of the borrowing of $10 million from Toronto Dominion Bank. And the third is a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of today's meeting. May I have a motion to pass those bylaws?
I'll put the motion forward, Your Worship.
Councillor Sherwood, thank you. Seconder?
I'll second.
Councillor Andrews.
Councillor Andrews, thank you. We'll call the vote. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by
Councillor Post.
Councillor Post. I'm going to call a vote again. Councillor Andrews.
Yes.
Councillor Sherwood.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor McIntosh.
Yes.
Councillor Peters.
Yes.
Councillor Post.
Yes.
Councillor Taylor.
Yes.
Mayor Brown, yes. Thank you, everyone. All the best.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Be
you.
safe.
Take care of yourselves.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.